into my introduction right here, you know, just one of the things here. Have you ever noticed that when you're the when when you're I wrote down, and I guess in today's world I have to be careful. I think everybody in here would know what I'm talking about. When you're the man or the woman or the person of high visibility, what does that, for whatever reason, if you're the head coach, if you're the CEO, if you're the prominent person, what are some things that, there's a lot of good with that. I mean, there's a lot of good, you get a lot of attention, perhaps, it may reflect in salary or whatever, but are there drawbacks to that?
Pressure.
All right, there's pressure. Got to deliver, don't you?
You're going to be scrutinized.
Oh, yeah, going to be scrutinized a lot more.
Whatever the outcome.
Yeah, it's on you. At the end of the day, the buck stops there. But it's time. So there's a lot of stuff that comes with it, and I'll kind of get into it, a little bit more, and kind of share with this. But when those people mess up, now there's sometimes we all mess up, and we can kind of get away with it with Cameron. Okay, but when they mess up, who hears about it? All of us, right? The public, Now, there's people that there's probably people every day, and I'm just going to use education, for example, but there's probably people every day that get arrested for, say, being drunk in public. Would you agree? But when it's a teacher or someone of prominence or a mayor or whatever, you read about it in the paper, don't you? So you always, when you're a person of prominence, you're being scrutinized. And I say this, let me kind of read from this right here, and it kind of gets into what we're talking about. And I'll say this, and I had this person one time, I was the head coach at a school, and it's just one of those situations where, it's tough, going through some tough losses. I think, one of those where it's like lost 3-4 games in a row by 6 points or less, where you're talking about you changed the result of 2 plays in a game, and it's different. And so, there's people in town after me and stuff like that, which nothing new, but I can remember this friend of mine, he was trying to help me out, and he just said, Scott, you just got to realize, everybody's jealous of you. I was like, jealous of you? Why? He goes, because you have one job everybody in the town wants. I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, everybody thinks they can be a football coach on Friday night. And everybody sees what you're doing, they think it's fun, and and when I say this ain't, and this is what he said, and I'll just say I was at Addison. What's the industry in Addison? What's Addison's the industry? No. They got 3 or 4 trailer plants there. And there's nothing wrong. And I tell kids all the time, I was like, listen, there's nothing wrong. People, if you go in there and you hit the clock every day to work an honest living, put food on the table, I respect that. I said, but if we went down, I said, and I would tell the kids this all the time, I said, but if we took a field trip down there and went down the line, and you asked those people, is this something I would like to do for 40 years of my life? Probably they would say no. And that's kind of how I approach it, because again, I respect hard work, and it's just one of those where, people got to do what they got to do. But he says, those people are jealous. He goes, all those guys are jealous of you because you got the job they want. And that kind of leads to something. So when you have that, it would lead to intense scrutiny. For me, obviously, if they came out, people who know me, they came out and accused me of being drunk or something, it kind of be that people that know me know that'd be a lot because they know I don't. But you get what I'm saying. So it kind of comes down, kind of getting to talk about Daniel here, but it's because, kind of gets into this, and I may get to experience a little bit of this. Who knows? It says, your first day on the job, you meet the enemy and don't even know it. Later, the company gives you a promotion, a raise, and a new office, all the things you deserve for your hard work and creative ideas. The only problem is that a few of your coworkers aren't too happy about it. They're determined to bring you down any way they can. That sound familiar? You ever been in a work area where that's, because I'm looking here, but like I said, because the exception of Matt, I think everybody in here has been in the education field, so I don't know how that works, but think about that for a second. What's the leading cause? I mean, what's the leading thing that leads to that? Why do people feel that way? Yeah, it's jealousy. That's the number one thing here. And we're going to see a lot of things, and there's times I've sat there, it's like, man, I think I deserve that promotion, and there's times where, it's tough, and there's a lot of things, politics and all, it goes into it, but yeah, it's jealousy, and it's kind of a thing here as we go on, but anyway, just kind of setting that out here, thinking about those terms as we talk about as we see. We're going to look at the first half of Daniel chapter 6 today, and we're going to see, even today, how many ever thousands of years or or centuries, let me use the word term century, centuries later, human race hadn't evolved much from those attitudes, have we? Still the same, that's the thing, and I've said it before, whether it's the Old Testament or whatever, what amazes me, I shouldn't say amazed, but what's amazing to me is, as humans, they were still the same in the Old Testament as we are today. They just didn't have cars and cell phones, probably. But it's the same attitudes over and over. So it's just as relevant what we read, what the Bible teaches us today as it was then. So anyway, so we'll kind of get into that. Just kind of getting into Daniel a little bit more here. If you remember last week, chapter 5, Daniel was dealing with a new king, Belshazzar again. I know I'm butchering that name. At least Darius is a lot better to pronounce this week. So we get that, and Daniel, of course, he interpreted the dream, and it was the handwriting on the wall, and of course we saw all that come to pass. It was true. And then, matter of fact, after that vision, Belshazzar was, he died that night, and they were conquered by the Medo-Persians. And Darius is now the ruler. So we're kind of getting on that, and kind of into my next spiel as we kind of get to an introduction here into chapter 6 as we get going. But before we do that. We're all like I said, we're, familiar with the 80s and stuff like that. Anyone remember the movie The Untouchables with Kevin Costner in it? Yeah, I like that movie. Elliot Ness. Yeah, so what were they called, the Untouchables? What was his gang called? Not his gang, but his group of law enforcement people called the Untouchables. You don't know? Okay, I'm the only one in here that can quote movies all the time, I guess. But, it's got Sean Connery. But during the 20s and 30s, this is in Chicago. Of course, Al Capone, corruption was rampant. He had people paid off in the law enforcement, the judicial system, things like that. And then Elliot Ness was federal agent charged with going after this, and he had to find people who were just, their character was would not take bribes, so they were considered unbribable. They were just men of character, and just some of the things here that the Untouchables, and it was during the time of Prohibition, so they were famous for their unwavering incorruptibility, relentless pursuit of Al Capone's criminal organization during the Prohibition era, integrity, incorruptibility. They were fearless, determined, focused on organized crime. They used innovative investigative techniques. They were some of the first FBI agents to use wiretaps, surveillance methods, with information from anonymous tips and informants to gather evidence. So basically, a lot of today's modern criminal investigation techniques were developed by these guys. And of course, publicity and support Ness actively sought out positive media coverage, inviting reporters on raids and publicly denouncing bribe offers, which helped solidify. So he was untouchable. So basically, if a criminal was to come up and say, hey, he's paid off too, he wanted his character to be, his character was to the point where everybody would just, well, that's a lie. We know Elliot Ness. And sometimes there's people we think like that. Of course, they're human. They're going to disappoint. But you get where I'm coming from. So that's kind of where all that, and I think, if you're familiar with Daniel, I think you see where I'm going with all these examples here. So that kind of gets us down into chapter 6 here. So as we kind of get the book of Daniel, of course, what's chapter 6 known for? Lion's Den. Now, I'll be honest, before I started really studying Daniel like this, that's maybe the only one I was familiar with. I'll be, the Lion's Den. And here's the thing. This one book that Brother Nathan gave me, and it gave me to think about it. And I ask you this question: was the Lion's Den the biggest danger of Daniel's time in Babylon, in captivity? Or what else? I mean, if you get thrown into a pit of lion, that's pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Most dangerous point in his was when he had the opportunity to take the food of everybody else.
Mm-hmm. At that point, why is that?
Because he was young, what you consider immature, and he would have been quite vulnerable at that point.
Yeah. And then throughout that time, was that the only time he would have? Because if he would have ate that food, he wouldn't have been able to set himself as being different, would he? We wouldn't be reading this story because he would just been one of the others. I'm just going to conform. And that was just the beginning of his time. So really what this was saying was all those times right there that really being in that culture of that pagan culture right there, every day he had to prove I'm different. So the influence or the negative influences of that culture, or the constant, I don't know if temptation is the word right there, but just being exposed to that, and it starts right there. It kind of gets into that because at that day, and this kind of gets ahead a little bit because I was going to reference that. At that point, the Babylonians at the time, later on Medo-Persians, understood this guy's different. He stands out. And I think as Christians, right there, there's a message there in itself that what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to be in this world. But, and again, just some other stuff. Chapter 6 concludes the strictly historical section of it, so it gets scary for me starting in about 2 weeks because I stretched this out to cover the. We're going to put Daniel in the den today. We got to get him out next week, but and then we'll get into some of the prophecy right there, or get into the prophecy, I should say. But so from that point, that kind of leads us into where we're at right here. And again, the only thing I regret about this is I like being closer to you guys, but I can't spread everything out so I can see it right here. So as we get into it, let's kind of look at the first half right here of Daniel, and we're going to Daniel chapter 6, verses 1 through 9, and passed it right there. And again, you don't feel pressured, but would someone like to, could I take a volunteer to read that for us? Just kind of get it set for us. Anybody mind?
Daniel 6 what?
1 through 9.
It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion or fault, for as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find against him concerning the law of his God. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king, and said thus unto him, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors, the princes, the counselors, the captains, have consulted together to establish a royal statute, and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree.
All right, so there's your first half right there. Kind of sets the stage right there. So as we go through, we kind of divide it up like I have it on the page right there. So as we go, thank you. So again, I'm trying to get everything out of whack. I made that decision about 30 seconds before. So, but anyway, so as we look at it, you know, we said that Darius has come in. He's the new guy in charge, and I'll kind of lead back you into my college football experience here. I don't know, and it may be for any profession, but when there is a college football head coaching change, when that happens, usually, it's a little different in high school because you got some coaches that have tenure and stuff. But what usually, when a new head coach at the collegiate level comes in, what happens to the assistants? They're usually going. Well, most of them are gone. That's not always the case. Some of them stay behind, don't they? But for the most part, when a new coach comes in, he's going to come in. He cleans house. He wants his guys in there. Makes sense. I mean, unfortunately, there's people that are qualified that lose jobs because of that. But for the most part, he wants people that he knows and he trusts. But we see right here as we come in, and that's not the case right here because Darius, it says right there, he set over the kingdom 120 princes, governors, however you want to put it right there. I think our book refers to them as satraps. So, it's just talking about 120, it's divided into 120 provinces. I'm quoting from our book here on page 146. Another thing, a lieutenant or viceroy, so that's kind of what these guys are. But there were 3 guys that were over them. So I like, it says these 120 satraps, whatever you want to call them, were under the oversight of 3 administrators, perhaps with 40 under each. I was like, 120 divided by 3. But makes sense. And the key character trait was trustworthiness, because these were the guys to make sure these guys weren't ripping off. So I figure probably these 120 princes, they're probably responsible for collecting the tributes and the taxes and all that. And so they had to make sure, and really, and the thing is, and again, I will have to admit, I'm one of the things I like movies about the mob and stuff. Not that I want to be a mob boss or anything, but it's just the organization. I'm just like, man, take all that organization right there and put it to and build something positive, So they got different types. They got captains and all that, But anyway, you got it's almost, you got guys watching guys is what it is. And so it's trustworthiness. But I think it's kind of I think that says something about Daniel. So here comes, so what is this, the 3rd or 4th king now that's come in since Daniel's been in? And every time they've chose Daniel to be part of be pretty high up in his organization, hasn't it? So I think that says something right there about, it goes to it. But anyway, it says Daniel was now, and this is on page 147 of your book, Daniel was now more than 80 years old. He was working with people who were much younger than he was and had more vitality than he did. But they were not the believers in the one true God who guided Daniel and gave him strength. Despite the age advantage of his young workers, Daniel, with God's favor and blessing, proved himself much more capable than others. For that reason, the king came greatly to respect him. And I read that, and it's kind of, it was funny because and again, as I said, I probably get tired of hearing me reference my experiences, the sports stuff, but that's just my life. We are, a good friend of mine says we are a product of our experiences. Everybody in here has their own story where it gets us here today. But mine included 6 years of collegiate football. But to break in where I did, I'm sitting there 50 years old, and most of the guys in the office I'm sharing with are under 25 years old. So I had, you know, what way could I stand out? And, and it was just, so I kind of related when that was there, like, man, I felt that. I wish I'd read that before I went in, because it kind of gave me more, because I was just like determined, here's the deal, I'm not going to let these young guys, they may go down there and they can work out, do all that, but they're not going to outwork me, not in the football part of it. So, but anyway, so Daniel, for whatever reason, he's standing out in it. Whether it was Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and now Darius, he keeps standing out and gets chosen. And I think, that theme there is something. So, but starting out with, let's take a look at that first question. How would you describe the kingdom of Darius compared to that of Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar? What are some differences there? Start getting in my teacher mode here. Monica, what do you? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. Like, you got Belshazzar and Nebuchadnezzar, the structure of their kingdom compared to the way Darius has set it up. Maybe that's a better way to word that.
They had their sons or relatives or something, like,
Yeah, it was a little more family oriented.
yeah, this one he just set up some.
Yeah, he kind of delegated a little more, didn't he?
A lot more guys too, he set up.
So what does that do to, I guess, I'm trying to find, what's the term? How would you describe the power structure then of Darius's compared to Nebuchadnezzar's? More whose was? Darius. His more so Nebuchadnezzar, pretty much it was centralized power right there. Pretty much he was the man. He ruled it all. So I guess authoritarian. We've said that word before to describe Nebuchadnezzar. So it's more authoritarian. So if you go back now, and if we think about the first dream, if you remember in the first dream where it was talked about the head of gold and then silver, brass, and things, some of the commentators talked about now how that's kind of related to, if you notice, you go from gold to silver. Silver's still pretty good, but it's not quite gold. And what was it, silver to iron or brass after that? I can't remember. Brass, and then iron, and then it gets down to clay. So what's happening to the value of each material? All right. So I guess, just talking about how power is centralized, and then it just kept going down. And so it just kind of ties into the dream like that. So we kind of get into verses 3 through 5 now. As we go from there, it says, how does Darius show wisdom in choosing Daniel to be one of the three presidents right there? Kind of, we've said some of that already, but what was it? Think Daniel just walked up, handed him a resume? Yeah. How many times is that, really? I mean, if you think about it, even today, that's how a lot of the hiring process, what does it say? It's not what you know, it's who you know. Now, again, I took the phone call. I was walking out of the in-service on Friday. My phone call rang, and it was a principal from another school, and somebody put me down for a reference right there. And it's one of these where I don't like doing that because I don't want to be, but I also got, and this particular person I knew, he's not really a strong teacher. He's a good guy. I think he's morally, you can't question him morally and stuff like that. And he would always do what I asked, and that's about all I can say. Because and again, I try not to give references on what people told me. I said, I've never observed him teaching. I said, but I can say this. When I was a head coach and he worked for me, he did everything I asked him to do. And he's a good family man. I think he's a good person. And that's what he said. And he goes, well, and I can tell and the principal, he made a good point. He goes, well, it's August 1st, and he's a math teacher, and he's still looking for a job. That's, if you're in the business right now, math teachers and science teachers, I think, are unicorns right now. So I said all that to say, I was a connection because I knew that it was Shane, a guy named Shane Brown that called me, but I knew him and I knew the guy. I connected him, but sometimes, yeah, it's not who you know, but also, I think Coach Jones, he said it best. He goes, if you want me to give you a recommendation, he goes, you got to prove to the point where when a guy calls me, I have to tell him, you have to hire this guy. And I think that's probably somebody somewhere told Darius, hey, you need to hire, you got to hire this Daniel guy. He's pretty sharp. He predicted both dreams, he interpreted both dreams that kind of, matter of fact, the night you came in, he told Belshazzar what's going to happen to him, basically. So yeah, I think that's right. And I wrote down this, does seniority equal superiority? Sometimes. It's good, isn't it, when that's happening? So, and I'll laugh about this, and again, I don't have to go so we move on, but what I did try to, when I went into that situation with those younger guys, wherever I was at, I always tried to be a mentor. And I'm trying to do that now, try to give back to the coaching profession, but by my second year there, and I've shared with you before, I guess I was the lovable old guy to everybody in the office, they take pictures, they screenshot pictures, and it was like, there's this Robert De Niro movie called The Intern where he's working in between two young guys in an office setting about like it was. He's both giving them fist bumps. They take it off, they'd superimpose two of their pictures on it and put my face on there, It's like, anyway. Yeah, and it was fun, and a lot of those guys are full-time coaches now. It's great to see their success, but that's what somebody goes, hey, we're going to go down and work out. One of them one day goes, no, I'm going to stay up here with the OG. I want to talk to him a little bit, get some wisdom, But if you can have, and again, but did Daniel have superiority even before he had seniority? Yeah. First example we gave right there. How old was he when he was offered the food again? 17, 18 years old. So most of the time, age does, because I sat there and I look at, I remember making that mistake, but Daniel had wisdom even at the early age, and let's take a look right here. So now we come into it right here as we move on through the we see that the presidents and the princes start assembling together, and they were jealous of Daniel. And let's see why. Verse 3. This Daniel was preferred above the presidents and the princes because of an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to get him over the whole realm. So basically, I guess, to put it in terms, Darius is going to make him prime minister, basically. And, those other folks didn't like it. That happens before. We was watching a show, and this guy comes in, watching, we're streaming a series, and a guy comes in, he'd been working there for 3 weeks, and they kind of make him one of the senior positions. So the rest of the crew, a bunch of them quit, a bunch of them just pranked him. They left goats in his office one time, filled it up with bicycles and stuff like that. So they were jealous, and he goes, does the rest of the staff hate me? He goes, oh, no doubt they hate you. He goes, that's beside the point, though. You got something you need to get done here. So, but anyway, but yeah, that's what it was. I mean, here it is, and they're, especially it's one of those. So let's just say, let's take it from this point of view, something we can understand. So if Nathan, and I'll pick on you right here, but at your shop right there, if you brought in a new guy, you probably got employees been working for you for a long time, I guess. Huh? Not really? I don't know. You talk about them like you've known them your whole life, but. Two and a half years. So.
He's the son-in-law, so he can't get
Yeah, he can't. All right. Bad example. All right. Monica. Let's take your principal, for example. She brings a new person in. Let's say she brings a new teacher in, and then she's been there for 3 weeks, or he's been there for 3 weeks, and she makes him the assistant principal after 3 weeks being the new guy. What do you think the reaction of the rest of the staff's going to be? They're not going to be real happy about that, especially those that have an administration certification that's been on that staff for years. So there's going to be some petty jealousy there, right? And, and again, I apologize for putting you on the spot there, but as I said, I'm back in the business now, so, you know what I mean? And, but anyway, like I said, yeah, like I said, I hadn't forgot about you back there either. I'm coming to you here in a minute. But seriously, but yeah, people go get jealous about that, and that's a natural reaction. So what would they try to do? Every time that guy or woman, just to be whoever that is, messes up, what do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna run to that printer. Hey, your guy, he ain't getting it done. And I saw him. So, and we as Christians in the world, that's the same thing. Boy, they're just sitting there. The world's waiting to see us mess up, aren't they? You know, I got to keep that in mind too, because that's probably the worst witness I am sometimes, the way I talk to officials. Because I sit there and start looking, man, somebody's watching me. They're not seeing God in me. I mean, I don't think God minds us being passionate and stuff, but we do have better ways to show it, you know. But anyway, so we see we see what's being said right here. Daniel's promoted. They start plotting against him. And why was he promoted? A, he was doing a good job. But B is talking about his spirit was excellent, and it was in him. And the king, you know. So as we look at that, he was living by the spirit to the point where what does it tell us right there? Could they find anything negative about him? No. If we look at it right here, it says, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. So that's pretty cool right there, isn't it? We can't find it. And so from there, you know, he lived by the Spirit to the point where if anyone tried to talk negative about him, everybody that knew Daniel would say, what? That's a lie. Nope, you got that wrong. And if we look a couple of times, Paul talks about this, Philippians 2 and 15. And again, let me try to find that here real quick. And then if someone has Acts 24 and 16, I'll get Philippians right here. I got Acts 24:16. Someone find Philippians real quick right there. This is and it says, and herein do I exercise myself to have always a conscious void of offense towards God and towards men. So basically, you know, what that's saying is, my conscience towards, he's saying there, my conscience towards God is what's going to be clear. And if I offend other men, well, that's just too bad. And then what's someone got Philippians 2:15? Go ahead.
That you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom you shine as lights in the world.
Does that describe Daniel? Yeah, no doubt. Daniel was different, and you know, and we see that, like I said, you know, kind of some of the questions here. We don't have to go through and answer each one, but I want the last one right here. How are God's people, and you see the ones I've mentioned right there, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, have been different than those around them thus far in the book of Daniel. And again, we know Daniel and the food, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you know, they were different. How were they different? What did they refuse to do? Yeah, they didn't bow down. They refused to pray to the golden image that was Nebuchadnezzar. And we see Daniel right here as we continue on, as we get into it, he's going to be this. So basically they refused, you know, to conform to the pagan society that they were in. You know, they were going to, you know, they was going to worship the one true God. And they didn't care. So as we get back into it right here in the verses from there, so, you know, Daniel, there's no doubt about Daniel's character. We can see that not only by his actions, but the way the other people saw about it. So it says Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes. And then right there, when your enemy's biggest thing is, hey, we can't find anything wrong with this guy, we got to make something up. You know, that gives you that's a pretty good reputation right there. So Daniel was different. They said, if we're going to find something wrong, it's going to have to be within his religion. So verses 6 through 9 right here, we see the plot. And basically they asked, Darius, and kind of we get into it right here. How would you describe Darius? How would we describe Darius? Good dude, bad dude? The main, I'm just here, you know. He's not a bad guy, is he? How do we know that?
Well, he's not a dictator.
All right. He's not a dictator. That's, I guess that's always, well, what can you say about him? Well, he's not a dictator. Oh, go ahead.
Is he not the one? Which one is it that Ezra goes to? Cyrus, king of Persia.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah,
historically speaking, there's no mention of Darius.
yeah,
So they kind of think Darius and Cyrus were the same person.
yeah. Some of the commentary I read said that Darius was just ruled for about 2 years, and then Cyrus took over. I think that was in one of those books you gave me. But so yeah, there. And I know it talked about secular. He referred to secular history. Basically, pretty much kind of confirms that Darius was not your average just authoritarian ruler or whatever. That he's a pretty good guy. And I think we're going to see it later on. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So keep that in the back of our mind as we go, especially when we get into the second part. And I may actually get to the point. I'm actually going to the point where I've been on 1 through 9. And I never thought we may have to pick up 10 through the rest of it next week because I don't want to rush through that. But we see right here, and even though Darius is a good guy, he does have some flaws. Princes come in there and they manipulate him, don't they? So let's take a look right there. It says, if you look at verse 6, "O King Darius, live forever." So they start buttering him up, don't they? And they go, "Hey, you need to, you're such a great guy right here. You need to decree and ask a petition that whosoever shall ask for a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save you, the king, that he shall be cast into the den of lions." So let me read that again here from the King James. "That whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den." And the king basically is like, "Hey, you the guy, you the man, Man, it's nice when people talk good about you. Oh, it's like I had to tell Stevie last night, or the other day. She was like, "Man, I've talked to a lot of people. They're excited about you, but Coach Howard," I said, "Listen," I said, that's all good, but I said, first time we give up a touchdown since I'm calling defense, I said, that's going to change." So when people start singing your praises, you can't get caught up in that, because eventually, and the same way, you can't get caught up when they're being all negative. And that story I told you about where the guy said about being jealous of my job, that's actually when I wanted to tell that story, but I got ahead of myself. But, so we always got to stay grounded and, as people, because we look at it. Here's old Darius right here. He signs that decree, and according to the law of Medes and the Persians, once the king signs the decree, it cannot be reversed. There's no taking it back now. So that kind of gets us here, and I think I can get this hopefully right here. It kind of gets us into the crutch of it right there. But verse 10, as we move on right there, it says, "Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his window being open in his chamber towards Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did before." So what did Daniel do? Did it change him? Not a bit. And he didn't do it in private either, did he? Well, I don't know, got this new law. Didn't care, did he? He just kept on doing what he was doing. And, as we get into verse 11, and here's what happened. If he prayed 3 times a day, probably Daniel, they probably knew what when he prayed. So here's the deal. What's ironic about 11? Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying, making supplication before his God. Hey, we got him. We caught you praying. Is that not ironic, really, when you think about it? So we see right there a couple of things. Like I said, Darius he yielded to flattery, so he signed his decree. Didn't affect Daniel. I was thinking like this. It's like, and I don't want to get started, but it's like Jimmy and Jane were upset when Hackelberg voted to go with. And it's just what they said. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect me. And that's just the attitude. I can't control that. It's not going to affect me. I think that's the way Daniel, I got this new law. It's not going to affect me. Now, it's a little different because I'm not breaking the law with it. Daniel's breaking the law with it. And he's like, that's one of those times where, about praying and stuff like that. But I just, like I said, I left it like, as I thought about it. Now, these men, let's wait for them. Let's catch them praying. Can we be accused of that as Christians? I can't, unfortunately. So from there, they came, and as soon as they saw him, guess what they did? What did they do? Ran right there and he tackled, Just like little elementary kids, right? Little elementary kids can't wait to tell them somebody. That's why I say, I see little kids, you look like you want to tell them somebody right now. That's what I mean. But they can't wait. So they went and told King Darius, and again, then they answered that, hey, that Daniel, which is in the children of the captivity of Judah. Notice like when people kind of put a slight towards Daniel, they always throw that in there, don't they? Regardeth not thee, O king, not the decree that thou hast signed, but make it his petition 3 times a day. And here's the deal. Verse 14. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. So we get a lesson right here. And someone, like I said, Proverbs 29 and 20, and Proverbs 21 and 5, someone will look those up real quick. I think I can squeeze this out right here. The king was very upset and stuff. So that right there tells us that the king was a pretty good guy. He's like, what have I done? Oh my, he's like, I've got Daniel in trouble. You ever done that where you've kind of made a hasty decision and we didn't see the consequences, like it causes somebody else to get in trouble that we like? Oh no. So you can see the king, man, he was worried about it and stuff. So it kind of gets us in here, and I wrote down on this that, he can't take it back, can he? He can't sign, I just reversed this. I can't sign I can't do whatever. But Proverbs 29 and 20 and 21 and 5 warns us here about what I call knee-jerk reactions. And I'll tell you what, the education profession is the worst profession in the world about knee-jerk reactions, about, hey, we're going to do this, and they don't think about the long-term consequences. And it's in a lot of things. You can agree with that in the nutrition side of it. There's probably a lot of things that, man, it sounds good on paper, but they don't think about the long-term consequences. Probably, Mark's in the counseling world, so a lot of things that come down. So what does Proverbs tell us there? Let's go. Someone got 29 and 20.
29 and 20?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seest thou a man that is hasty in his words? There is more hope of a fool than a man.
All right. 21 and 5, if anybody's got that one.
The thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness, but of everyone that is hasty only to
All right. So we kind of get a little warning there about hasty decisions right there. And what led to Darius having this hasty decision? He was what? They flattered him, didn't they? What did it lead to? What did that lead to Darius being susceptible to? What's been the magic word for all of them falling? Pride. Pride, I'm glad we as humans, we've outgrown that. There's no pride, people not getting in trouble because of pride today. So we see right there how in verses 12 through 15, Darius's response shows how he thinks of Daniel. And then finally, Daniel's actions right here in lines to Matthew 5 and 11 and 12. I got that right here real quick. And again, this is Jesus speaking. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you, falsify for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. So, you think Daniel's actions align with that? There's no doubt, right? So we're kind of getting the example here of, what our life should look like to the world today. So finally, verses 16 and 17, we get into that, and we see that Daniel is, despite all of the efforts right here of Darius, they have to put him into the lion's den. So we can see that Daniel's life did have an impact on Darius. Why? Because when he put him into the lion's den, Darius was pretty distraught about that, wasn't he? Because he gets into all that. So what we'll do is next week we'll do the next 2 days in the book, and I'll kind of, as the amount of time right here, rehash on the end of this right here. But he gets put in, so we kind of get the idea of it. All right. I kind of liked it right here.
What chapter?
Or we're going to be the last half of chapter 6. So I think it's days 22 and 23, and then probably I'll pick back up rehashing